Hello summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Kellen and today I'll be going over 10 sleeper OP builds that you have to try out in patch 9.23. The preseason came with a lot of interesting changes which have drastically shaken up the meta. And since we want you guys to get as much LP as possible, our analysts are going to be sharing with you some builds that are less common, yet still extremely effective. Also guys, today's question of the day is which unique builds have you found success with during this patch? Me personally, I've been using some Zac support and he feels super strong with the new alcoves and the aftershock buffs. Let us know your answers in the comments down below. And one last thing, are you getting ganked in your own lane, constantly getting demolished? Well, don't worry, we've got you covered. Whether you're looking for tier lists, champion guides, coaching, or courses from your favorite pro players, ProGuides is where you'll find them. Even players like Night Blue, Bunny Fufu, Boxbox, and Loco Doco support ProGuides. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and start improving right now. With that stuff being said though, let's jump into the video. Let's start off with the top lane. The first sleeper OP build we'll be covering for this patch is Nocturne. Ever since the start of the preseason, Nocturne's play rate and his win rate have increased exponentially. Despite Presence of Mind having its ultimate cooldown removed, players have been finding a lot of success with Nocturne thanks to a few new additions in the game, and most notably Sanguine Blade. Although right now he is typically being played in the mid lane or the jungle, many challenger and pro players have started spamming him top. At first glance, this might seem a little odd, but it all starts to make sense once you dive deeper. For runes, you'll want Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Alacrity, and Coup de Grace, followed by Resolve for Overgrowth and Bone Plating. However, this rune page is not set in stone, as there are some Nocturne mains who prefer to go Conqueror, Hail of Blades, or even Press the Attack. All of these can work fine, and for secondary runes, you can pretty much go any tree that you want because Nocturne really is that flexible. When it comes to builds, you'll want a Sanguine Blade into Ravenous Hydra, Ninja Tabi, Duskblade, Black Cleaver, and a GA, but once again, Nocturne's super flexible so you can build around him and around the enemy team however you want. If they have a lot of AP, you can opt for things like Wit's End and Maw. If they have a lot of burst, you can go more tanky with Sterak's and Randuin's. If they have tanks, then you can try out Bork or even a Rageblade. It takes a bit of time to master the building components on this champion, but he is so rewarding once you get used to it, so give it a try, you really won't regret it. Next up on our sleeper OP builds, we have one for Fiora. Fiora's receiving a ton of buffs in the last couple of patches, and it's safe to say that now she's one of the strongest champions in the game. Her split pushing is almost unbeatable thanks to her true damage, mobility, healing, and invulnerability, but this new build makes her even more OP. Sanguine Blade Fiora is seeing a ton of play on the eastern servers like Korea and China. This is mainly due to the passive of this item aligning with Fiora's strengths. Although the lethality doesn't really help too much, the AD and lifesteal and the insane amount of attack speed definitely do. And during the laning phase and even throughout parts of the mid to late game, it will still continue to shine. Once you purchase the item, it's an incredibly powerful one-item spike that's unmatched by any other item, and since your main job as Fiora is to split push and stay isolated for the majority of the game, Sanguine Blade really plays into your favor. For runes, you'll want to take Conqueror, Triumph, Bloodline, and Last Stand, with Resolve secondary for Demolish and Revitalize. However, some players also like to take Bloodline or Alacrity with Coup de Grace, and secondary runes they opt for Domination for Ravenous Hunter and Taste of Blood. For items, you'll want to go Sanguine Blade into Ravenous Hydra, Trinity Force, Merc Treads, Sterak's, and a GA. I've tried this build a lot myself, and I can say that it feels great into specific matchups, but you'll want to be careful and make sure you really think before you purchase this item. Sometimes Trinity Force or Ravenous Hydra first item is much better, most notably if they're going to play a full tank champion with Ninja Tabis, armor, all that stuff. Here's a quick recap of all of the builds that we mentioned for top lane. Now let's move on to the jungle. First up, for the sleeper OP jungle builds, we have a pretty common champion and a favorite among players in Lee Sin. However, Lee Sin doesn't usually have that many unique builds because it's usually a choice between Conqueror or Electrocute every game. However, there's a new build that a lot of the best Lee Sin players in Challenger have been testing out, and it's Dark Harvest Lee Sin. This build has been rising in popularity thanks to the addition of the new lethality items, and pro players have been spamming it ever since. The playstyle of this build is to try to one-shot your opponents before they can one-shot you, funny enough. So unlike the usual builds, you'll be a full-on glass cannon with a very powerful burst combo. For runes, you'll take Dark Harvest, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter, followed by Inspiration for Cosmic Insight and free boots. Then for items, you'll be rushing a Blue Smite Warrior enchantment into Moby Boots, Duskblade, Umbral Glaive, Yomu's, and Edge of Night. One thing to note with this playstyle is that you'll have to be a somewhat experienced Lee Sin player in order to execute the build correctly. Your combos have to be fast and smooth, and you have to hit your skill shots. Unlike the usual build with things like Conqueror and combined with Black Cleaver, you will be way squishier, so missing your skill shots or mistiming those abilities will be 10 times more punishing. And lastly, for the sleeper OP jungle builds, we have one that seems a bit troll, but seriously guys, don't knock it till you try it. This is a build for a champion that nobody really plays, which is Ivern. A few patches ago, Ivern was changed from a melee champion to a ranged champion, which meant that his dueling potential has now become stronger, and in patch 9.23, there's a couple of Ivern one-tricks in Masters and above who are literally taking Hail of Blades every game on Ivern. With this rune, your early game ganking becomes a lot stronger, and you can surprisingly duel the enemy jungler in a 1v1. I've seen Iverns beat Lee Sins in a 1v1 near Crab while using this build and being on equal ground. For runes, you'll take Hail of Blades, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Relentless Hunter, followed by Sorcery Secondary for Transcendence and Water Walking. When it comes to items, you'll be building the standard build with Moby Boots, Ardent Censer, Redemption, Athenes, Mikhails, and a Mage Eyes. However, always remember that you have to start Talisman, but you will eventually sell it as the game goes on. Opting to go for Hail of Blades means you're looking to be an aggressive early game jungler while transitioning into a role of a supportive tank during the mid to late game. One of Ivern's biggest weaknesses is his lack of early pressure, but that Hail of Blades is there to cover it up. Here are the builds for jungle. Now let's move on to mid lane. For sleeper OP picks in the mid lane, we are going to start with Tristana. Triss mid has been seeing a decent amount of play, and during the World Championships a month ago, she was used as a counterpick to Ryze. However, for solo queue, her stats are abysmal and she wasn't all that popular, but during the preseason, her win rate and her play rate has started to rise a little bit thanks to the addition of, you guessed it, Sanguine Blade. The item works so well with her, and you can pretty much solo kill your opponent as soon as you buy it. The pure amount of burst you get with this one item power spike is literally enough to automatically win your laning phase, and then your opponent is going to die a lot if they don't respect you. However, one thing to note is that you'll be a lot more susceptible to ganks because this item is quite weak when there are 2 or more enemy champs nearby. However, during the mid game, you can use this item to split push the map and also assassinate anybody who tries to match you. And because Tristana is a tower destroyer, that attack speed is helpful. Next up in the mid lane, we have Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol's play rate has dropped significantly due to his recent rework. However, his win rate has done the opposite and has gone up. This basically means that his playstyle has become a lot more boring and less appealing to the small player base that he has, but he's actually become stronger. Instead of being that slow but tanky DPS mage in the backline, Asol has changed his identity into a complete burst mage that can deal some serious damage using his abilities. However, one of the main reasons why our analysts consider Asol to be a sleeper OP pick for solo queue is thanks to his roaming ability. Aurelion Sol's E is pretty much like an early game Twisted Fate, allowing you to travel from one lane to the next within literal seconds. This type of pressure before level 6 is only seen on Aurelion Sol, and it plays in line with the fiesta of solo queue. Simply being able to impact other parts of the map this early on can be game-changing, and having a strong macro foundation can net you a ton of free low. These were the mid lane builds that we talked about, so here's a quick recap. And now we're going to move on to the bottom lane. First up, in the bot lane, we have a sleeper OP build for Veigar. Now, this build isn't new by any means, but it's still considered sleeper OP due to his play rate being so low, for whatever reason. You rarely even see this champ being played bottom anymore, but he's still super good. For runes, you'll take Glacial Augment, Boots, Biscuits, and Cosmic Insight, followed by Domination for Cheap Shot and Ingenious Hunter. The reason the build works so well is mainly due to the synergy it has with your support. Being able to slow down your opponents and then lock them up with a cage sets up a perfect CC chain with your duo, which will eventually lead to a complete nuke on the opponent. He's typically going to work best with champions like Leona and Nautilus, who are already very popular, so make sure you pick up a duo partner and try that out. Also, a huge reason why Veigar is probably better bot lane than he is mid lane is thanks to his weakness of being eliminated by his support. If you play Veigar mid, you have a lack of self peel due to your E having a delay, and also him being very squishy. However, Veigar bottom gets a ton of help from his support, which makes him safer overall, and is also the sole reason that ADCs usually can't go mid unless they're self-sufficient. Next up in the bottom lane, we have a build for Jhin. Lethality Jhin has pretty much disappeared in recent years, but a few players have been trying it once again. This is rising in popularity on the Chinese servers, but it might even catch on into Korea, NA, and EU sometime soon. For Rune, you'll take Fleet, Overheal, Bloodline, and Coup de Grace, followed by Transcendence and Mana Flow Band in Sorcery. For items, it's Youmuu's, Swifty Boots, Edge of Night, Duskblade, Umbral Glaive, and Last Whisper. When trying this playstyle, you're really looking to hard burst your opponents with autos and abilities. However, one thing to note is that this build isn't always optimal. You really have to think about when this build is going to be better than standard crit, so do some testing before you give it a go in ranked. And here's a quick recap for all of the builds that we have for bottom lane. Finally, let's move on to supports. First up, for the supports, we have Swain. Swain support has been seeing a lot of play in solo queue recently, but the builds for him have either been Electrocute or Phase Rush. However, 9.23 saw the addition of the new Conqueror rework, and that's made the Swain main starting to take Conqueror thanks to his combo being able to proc all 10 stacks. In addition to this, the healing from Conqueror of course synergizes very well with his ultimate and helps him survive in the front line even longer. For runes, you'll take Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Tenacity, and Coup de Grace, followed by secondary runes of Ravenous Hunter and Cheap Shot. For Swain support items, you'll take Shard of True Ice into Rod of Ages, Sorc Shoes, Zanya's Liandry's, and a Morello. Some Swain mains have been opting to go some weirder items like Luden's Echo or Hextech Protobelt, and they're not too bad. Luden's can help you secure some easy 2v2s, and Protobelt is a great one-item power spike that can really help you land your ultimate. Lastly, for supports, we have a build for Soraka. Soraka bottom is quite common on the Rift these days, but trust me, this build is very underutilized for how strong it really is. Most Soraka players tend to rush an Ardent Sensor and build into things like Redemption and Mikhail's. However, for the preseason patch, our analysts are suggesting that you try out an Athene's rush into Shurelia's. This build is pretty common in high elo thanks to the extra survivability that Athene's grants and the playmaking potential of Shurelia's. For runes, it's Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Scorch, followed by Resolve for Bone Plating and Revitalize. For items, you'll get Shard of True Ice into Moby Boots, Athene's, Shurelia's, Redemption, and Ardent Sensor. And here's a quick recap for all of the builds that we mentioned for support. That's going to be it for our 10 sleeper OP builds for patch 9.23. If you enjoyed watching this video, then please hit that like, comment, and subscribe button to be notified of our next videos. Also, make sure to check out ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements in your rank. That's going to be it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the Rift.